Hello everyone. So in this tutorial, we will learn how to set up the local workbench of PipeForce. So you can actually develop apps in two ways. One way is the online way, where you use the online workbench editor, which you can see here. So here you can see we have this directory format, and you can create apps, lists, forms, and so many more things using this online workbench. Um, and then the second way is to use the local workbench and write the low code or the sources using your favorite uh, development environment, such as Visual Studio. So hi, my name is Mujtaba, and I will show you how to set up the local workbench, which is the second approach in order to develop PipeForce apps locally while using your favorite IDE. In our case, we will use Visual Studio. So let's get started. First of all, we will go to the PipeForce documentation website, and we'll go to the tutorials, and you can scroll down to see the tutorial 12, which actually shows you step by step how you can go about setting up the local workspace. So first of all, as you can see here, the prerequisite is to install Java, which has a version equal to or greater than 8. After you've done that, you can also install your favorite IDE. Here, it's suggested to use Visual Studio, but you can, of course, use your favorite IDE. And then the most important thing here is to set up the PipeForce CLI, which is actually used to create and publish resources like apps, workflows, forms, lists, and pipelines into your server or the low-code workspace. This is actually a command line tool, which simplifies all of these steps very much so. So you can download this PipeForce CLI with the latest version here. So you can just click on the jar file to download it. So after you've downloaded this jar file successfully, you need to open the command prompt. And now you can simply navigate to the directory where you downloaded the jar file. And now you need to run this Java command in order to install the CLI tool. Now the first thing it will ask is for the namespace. Now this namespace, of course, depends on your own PipeForce workspace. This most likely is related to your company name. Now, for example, if we have the trial version of the workspace of PipeForce, we will have this try as the namespace and the pipeforce.org as the host name. So let's put these entries here. Here we will put pipeforce.org, and then let's leave these as is. Now write down your username, then your password, and then it will check for login, and you will be successfully authenticated and logged in. So this PipeForce directory will be created in your home directory, and when you go into the CLI, you will see these folders. The folder bin has this PI tool, the execution tool. This will, of course, depend on your operating system, but you need to add the path of this PI execution tool to the environment variable. So that's very important. After you've done that, we can then use the PI or the CLI commands using your own command prompt, and we can then create apps and so forth, which we will do afterwards. And then we also have this configuration folder and the log folder, which is also relevant to this CLI tool. So after you have defined the path to the bin folder in your environment variable, we can now proceed to setting up the PI. So now, as you can see here, if you type in PI, it will show you the relevant commands that you can use with respect to this. Now, first of all, we need to create a new directory where we will put all of our sources related to the new apps that we will create. So let's call this as PipeForce apps. And then we will go into this folder and run this command, which is pi init. So after you've done that, you can now also navigate to the PipeForce apps to see what kind of sources we have created. So as you can see here, we have this .pipeforce folder, which is empty at the moment. Then we have this source folder, which will actually contain all of these sources related to your apps and whatever we link it with, like lists, forms, pipelines, and so forth. So now you can also use your IDE to write the sources to this. To actually open the IDE, we will use this command code dot. And for us, it will open the Visual Studio Code. And as you can see here, we have the same directory as this. So this directory is where we will create our new apps. And also one thing to remember here is whenever you add something, any code, any low code, any files, configuration files, you should always check this folder as a repo into your source code management system, like GitHub, for example. So you can also use this to share the code with your teammates, with your colleagues, and so forth. So as I already mentioned, this workbench folder will contain all of the sources of the apps that you would like to create. So with that, we will now create a simple app. And for that, we will run this command, pi new app. So it will ask for the app name, which we can give as Hello World. So after you've done that, you can now navigate to the workbench directory again to see how the structure has been changed. Now, as you can see here, a new app folder has been created for you, which is by the name of Hello World. And you have this configuration file, which is everything relevant, all of the relevant fields with regard to this app. And all of the other folders will be empty right now because we haven't really created anything within that app. But what we will do right now is we will create a new form inside that app. So let's do that. For that, we will simply run this command, pi new form. Let's say the form name to be person. Now, we have two options. We can either create a new schema or no schema at all. So this schema will be the actual structure of the data that will be inside that form. So the structure overall is defined by this schema. So we can create a new schema for this form. Let's also call this person. So now if you navigate to this schema, you can now see that the predefined structure has been defined for you, which you can of course change according to your requirements, but this is just like a custom structure for the schema that is defined here. And then this is the form entity. So after we have created this form as well as its pertinent schema, we can now proceed to publishing this app form and schema to the server, which we will do right now. So all of the changes that you have made will be published to the server by using this simple command, pi publish. Let's select yes. So as you can see here, the app, the person, the schema has been successfully published to the server, which we can of course also see right now. So let's refresh this. Then click on this drop down. And as you can see here, the new app Hello World has been successfully published to the online workbench as well. And you can also see the form source here, which is the same that we had in our local workbench. as well as the schema. Right, and then we can also see it in our installed apps. If you go inside the Hello World, you will see the form person has been created with a predefined schema or the structure as here. So you have these couple of fields, but you can of course also change this according to your requirements. You can add more fields and you can change the format, make it more vertical and so forth. So congratulations, you've created a new app, a new form, and a new schema of that form. Don't forget to check in your sources into GitHub, for example. And yes, that will be the end of the tutorial. So what you have learned here is how you can set up the local workbench and the CLI tool. Use the CLI tool to create a new app, a new form, and a schema for that form. And then finally publish all of these changes to the server and the online workbench. If you want to find more about PipeForce and the tutorials and the documentation, just check the description in the info box, and you can also get started with your free trial there. Thank you.